Them calendar boys, they were something else. Now, well, I'll miss them.
Welcome to MojoPlays, and today we are speculating about a game that hasn't even been confirmed yet. We're crazy, but hopeful. Let's take a look at 10 theories about Red Dead Redemption 3. For this list, we'll be looking at some speculations and theories about what the next entry in this fantastic series could entail. Learning about the events and characters through these two games has left a lot of doors wide open, doors Rockstar could easily take us into. Looking at the structure of the first two games, fans are able to make some pretty strong guesses about the possibilities for the third entry. Do you like the sound of any of these theories? Let us know in the comments below. Before we continue, we publish content all week long, so be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to get notified of our latest videos. Something new. Admittedly, a lot of these entries talk about events, characters, and stories that have already been established in the RDR universe. But before we get into the weeds, we should acknowledge the possibility that Rockstar might remove us from New Austin, West Elizabeth, and Mexico and take us to a whole new setting with an entirely new character and possibly a new gang. Traditionally, this is how Rockstar has handled its sequels, like with GTA. It allows for way less baggage and kind of endless possibilities. The fan base behind this particular Rockstar entry may not take so kindly to this though, as there are plenty of stories and characters in RDR 1 and RDR 2 that they'd like to see explored. Charles.
You have my friend.
He's not your friend. I'll give you money.
Be quiet.
Charles Smith is one of the best characters to come out of RDR 2. He does not appear in RDR 1 as at the end of RDR 2, the prequel, he leaves John and Sadie stating he wants to go north, meet a woman, and start a family. A Charles-driven story for the third entry would allow a fan-favorite character to return, whilst giving Rockstar the opportunity to explore a new setting and invite a whole bunch of new characters into his world. Does Charles have the gravitas to carry an entire plot on his lonesome though? Some argue no. A Charles sequel may have been a nice DLC, but as the basis for an entire game, we aren't so sure.
Charles, stay with her.
Charles, you worry about yourself. I'll be up there in a minute.
The Golden Age.
What the hell is this?
No matter who the game follows, no matter what story they tell, it would be more than likely that Rockstar follows the trajectory they've already set up by having the third entry of Red Dead Redemption take place further back in time again as the prequel to RDR 2. The exciting thing about this period of the 1870s and 1880s is that this was essentially the golden age of lawless, violent mischief in the American West. The stories and tales that come out of this time period are epic and wild, as well as deeply depressing and often dark. This period of time would be an interesting era to explore in RDR 3, should Rockstar decide to take us back there.
You're surrounded. This is how.
The rise of Linde.
Now we've had, well, a bad couple of days.
There have been many arguments about how it would, quote, not work for RDR 3 to jump back further in time to put us in the shoes of Dutch van der Linde and get an up-close and personal look at the rise of this infamous gang. The most popular argument is that we've seen the best of this gang, and there isn't any story left to tell. Entering RDR 2, we knew nothing about Arthur, Hosea, Lenny, or even Sadie. In RDR 1, John didn't discuss his biggest and most epic adventures from his past, and he definitely didn't discuss Micah Bell's betrayal. Rockstar created one of the greatest stories of all time by taking advantage of the vagueness and the holes that had been left in our RDR 1 protagonist stories. And with the vagueness and holes left in the story of Dutch van der Linde, there's no reason why they couldn't do it again. To see Dutch with his lost love Annabelle may humanize our antagonist into a protagonist, and tell me for 1 second you don't want to actually see what happened in Blackwater as the game's inevitable conclusion.
We have all made mistakes over the years, Hosea. Every last one of us. But I kept us together. Kept us alive. Kept the nooses off our neck.
Black Bell.
You there?
Oh, hello?
You a bounty hunter?
Well, not right now, I ain't. You Black Bell? I'd like to talk to you about your Wild West days.
Black Bell, otherwise known as Maybelle Elizabeth Coulter, appears as a minor character in one of the stranger missions of Red Dead Redemption 2. Black Belle became an infamous member of the Coulter Tobin gang, of which she is the sole surviving member. Her journey and jobs eventually resulted in her becoming a renowned gunslinger, much like Dutch van der Linde. She was so sought after, she amassed a bounty said to be higher than the famous gunslinger Linde Ricketts. So she's a pretty bad bitch. Some believe that her epic backstory combined with her history as a gang member could hint at the possibility of her story being the focus of RDR3. Some also believe that Rockstar left us a hint that this would be the case, as John's original Red Dead Redemption 1 hat can be seen hung up in her cabin, a clear Easter egg if I've ever seen one. The Calendar brothers.
Them Calendar boys, they were something else. Now, well, I'll miss them.
Me too, big man. Me too.
It's too bad.
Much like in GTA 5, some people theorize that RDR3 could involve multiple protagonists rather than just a sole gang member. The Calendar brothers are mentioned heavily throughout RDR2 as members of the gang whose ending we are all aware of. Mac was shot and killed by Andrew Milton at the Blackwater Massacre, while Davey died en route to Coulter as the gang drudged through the heavy snow. Could RDR3 put us in the shoes of those two brothers as we witness their history, their involvement in the gang, and ultimately their deaths? Only time will tell. Sadie Adler.
Yes. Now, it is going to be okay. We mean you no harm. Miss.
Fans have been clamoring to know more about Sadie since the moment the credits rolled on RDR2. Her character arc is easily one of the most interesting of the entire gang as we watch her go from farm wife widow to revered bounty hunter. Well, fans have been speculating for a long time after a possible leak from Rockstar that Sadie would be either the central character of RDR3 or a side character and possible friend of the protagonist. To follow Sadie's story before the events of RDR2 would possibly be a little boring during her farm wife days, so if Sadie is the protagonist of the new entry, it'd be safe to assume we'll be following her into the same timeline as RDR1 while she lives her Mandalorian dreams.
Now you know how it feels to watch somebody you love die. You ruined my life!
Colm's brother.
I met a couple of the O'Driscoll boys on the road into town, and things were about to get ugly. But you know how I am in a fight, huh? Like a corner tiger.
One of the most interesting things about the plot and characters of RDR2 was getting involved with and growing fond of characters who had been antagonists and enemies in RDR1. Some gamers speculate that we may switch sides again in RDR3 to jump back in time further and into the shoes of Colm O'Driscoll's brother, a man who was killed by Dutch van der Linde after the gangs agreed to peace. We obviously would hate to be on the side of Colm O'Driscoll, but we know that Colm never really liked his brother, so perhaps the O'Driscoll brother is the perfect character to follow as a more moral and rounded human who may have been the driving force behind the two gangs creating peace.
Sorry about your brother.
Yeah, well, I never liked him much.
Seeing the van der Linde gang as enemies whilst living in the shoes of a gang we know very little about has endless possibilities for epic storytelling. Jack Marston.
Did you hear that? Jack, we have to go back for Pa.
Let's go!
This theory for RDR3 has been around probably since RDR2 dropped. At the end of RDR1, one of the now infamous Red Dead epilogues takes place where, just like in RDR2, the protagonist dies and we step into the shoes of another character. In RDR2 it was John, in RDR1 it was John's son, Jack. There are two possibilities for a Jack Marston-driven story. We could follow Jack during the time between John's death and the epilogue of that game, watching him become a competent gunslinger himself. Or we could simply kick off our story from where RDR1 ends, with Jack having avenged his father, now moving on to this next adventure during the Prohibition era of American history. It wouldn't be much of a Western, but Rockstar could still make it awesome. Linde Ricketts.
What a great way to improve border relations. An illiterate farmer crossing the river coming into their civilization and butchering the local peasants?
Landon Ricketts was introduced in RDR1 as one of the best gunslingers to have ever fought his way through the West, and fans are so keen for him to be the protagonist of RDR3 that they've already got the plot laid out. One of the most interesting hidden details in RDR2 is in a newspaper article that states Landon Ricketts was fighting at the Blackwater Massacre. Remember that? The infamous event that nobody talks about in detail where Dutch shot and killed an innocent woman? Yeah, Landon was there. With Landon driving RDR3, we could get an epic prequel that leads up to the events of this massacre, and an epilogue that takes us from the massacre through till John meets Landon in Mexico. This story has so much potential for its own purposes, but also finally gives players an objective look at what the hell happened at Blackwater.
There must be a name for this.
An impasse, sir. An impasse.
Did you enjoy this video? Check out these other clips from MojoPlays and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified of our latest videos.